The Treaty of Paris in 1763 officially ended the French and Indian War, a conflict that had raged for nearly a decade between the British and the French, along with their respective indigenous and European allies. This war was part of the larger Seven Years' War, which spanned multiple continents, making it one of the first truly global conflicts. The British victory fundamentally altered the balance of power in North America and had far-reaching consequences across the world. The loss of French colonial dominance France, once a dominant colonial power in North America, suffered immense territorial losses under the treaty's terms. Almost all of its North American holdings were ceded, with Britain taking control of Canada and all French lands east of the Mississippi River. France retained only a few small territories, including the Caribbean islands of Guadeloupe and Martinique, Pondicherry in India, and the African trading post of Senegal. This marked the end of French colonial rule in North America and drastically reduced its influence in the Atlantic world. British territorial expansion. Britain emerged as the undisputed global power following the war. With the acquisition of Canada and Florida, ceded by Spain in exchange for the return of Cuba and the Philippines, Britain removed its primary European rivals from the North American continent. The Mississippi River now served as the western boundary of British-controlled territory. This expansion allowed Britain to consolidate its power but also brought new challenges, including governing a vast and diverse population, managing relations with indigenous nations, and handling the financial burden of an expensive war. The impact on Spain. While Spain suffered the loss of Florida to Britain, it gained the Louisiana territory from France as compensation for its support during the war. However, Spain's influence over Louisiana would remain limited, and this territory would eventually be secretly transferred back to France in 1800, before being sold to the United States in the Louisiana Purchase of 1803. The Treaty of Paris was a temporary setback for Spain, but it maintained control over a vast colonial empire in South America, Central America, and the western territories of North America. Britain's rising debt and colonial tensions. Although victorious, Britain faced enormous war debts as a result of its military expenditures during the war. The British government looked to its American colonies to help repay these costs, leading to a series of unpopular taxation policies. Laws such as the Sugar Act, Stamp Act, and Townshend Acts placed heavy financial burdens on the colonists and sparked widespread resentment. Many colonists who had fought alongside British troops during the war felt entitled to the same rights as British citizens, but were instead met with increased taxation and restrictions. These tensions, combined with a growing sense of American identity, led to the formation of resistance groups such as the Sons of Liberty. Protests and boycotts against British goods became common, setting the stage for political unrest. Ultimately, the resentment over British policies, combined with the lingering impact of the war, directly contributed to the outbreak of the American Revolutionary War in 1775. The role of indigenous nations. The Treaty of Paris largely ignored the interests of indigenous nations, despite their significant role in the conflict. Many indigenous groups had allied with the French, hoping to prevent British expansion into their territories. With France's defeat, indigenous nations lost a powerful ally, leaving them vulnerable to British encroachment. In response to British expansion and the aggressive settlement of their lands, many indigenous groups resisted. One of the most notable uprisings was Pontiac's War, 1763 to 1766, led by Chief Pontiac of the Ottawa tribe. This conflict saw indigenous forces attack British forts and settlements in the Great Lakes region, forcing the British to recognize the need for better relations with indigenous groups. As a result, the British government issued the Proclamation of 1763, which forbade colonial settlement west of the Appalachian Mountains. While this measure was intended to prevent further conflict, it angered American colonists who had hoped to move into the newly acquired Western territories. France's future revenge. Despite its defeat, France was not willing to accept British dominance without retaliation. The loss of its North American empire fueled French resentment and a desire for revenge. This opportunity came during the American Revolutionary War, 1775 to 1783, when France, seeking to weaken Britain, provided crucial military and financial support to the American patriots. French forces played a decisive role in key battles, most notably in the Siege of Yorktown in 1781, which
The
led to
French
British
alliance with the
surrender.
American Revolutionaries ultimately contributed to Britain's defeat,
Proving that the consequences of the Treaty of Paris in 1763 extended far beyond the immediate territorial changes. However, France's involvement in the American Revolution would also lead to financial strains that contributed to its own internal crises, culminating in the French Revolution in 1789. Conclusion: the Treaty of Paris in 1763 was a turning point in global history. It reshaped the colonial map, marked the decline of French power in North America, and solidified Britain's dominance as the world's leading empire. However, the war's financial and political consequences ignited a chain reaction that would lead to the American Revolution, indigenous resistance movements, and long-term shifts in global power dynamics. France's loss, Britain's gain, and Spain's territorial adjustments all played a role in shaping the modern world, making the treaty one of the most significant diplomatic agreements in history.